What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here bringing another video. Today we got our next episode for Power Rangers Dino Supercharge, episode 3, which this episode is entitled Nightmare in Amber Beach. Really interesting episode, definitely filler, but it's an important filler. And that's something I will have to tell you is a definite fact here. Though apparently it's said to be a filler, I don't really consider it filler because it actually does expand the story in a very important way. We'll get to that very soon. But let's start off with how this episode starts. So we see Shelby, as we know in the first episode of Dino Supercharged, we saw her that she was going back to college or whatever. She was doing some stuff. She was doing like summer school stuff. And she had taken this test in this episode, the one that we're watching now, talking about now, what am I saying? Not watching, talking about now, which she got a B on, which she wasn't very happy with because her father doesn't really treat those kind of grades positively because he wants the best for her. Her father wants the best for his daughter. So obviously not the best thing ever. So she's kind of disappointed and all that, and her father's not necessarily happy. But he's also not necessarily overly angry. But when we see them back at the cafe or whatever, the Rangers are talking, and eventually we see her father. And we had seen him in the first episode as well, but this episode he really was talked a lot. He had a bigger role, and I think that this is probably his last episode, most likely. I mean, maybe they'll bring it back at some point, but I think that this is probably his okay, we're good. Pretty much. But let's get going here. So what happens is that we suddenly see him, and apparently their family owns the Walk-ins ice cream company or whatever, which is this this big ice cream company, I guess, in this TV show. So they're a thing, and so her father wants Shelby to study business and get pretty well informed in that regard so that she can be successful. Thing is that obviously Shelby is not all interested in business, as we know even from the first season that she's not necessarily the most interested in business, and she has more of an interest in dinosaurs, as we know. So that is definitely a thing. So in order to do things right at this time, she has to listen to her father, of course. And so the thing is that she does get to studying, and Heckle suggests maybe she should go to sleep, and she's like, until I got a good grade, I really can't. And Heckle just walks away and foreshadows the future of don't worry, you'll be sleeping soon enough. So that all happens. We then see that the monster for the episode inside, the old monster base, the name is Nightmare. Nightmare is a sheep-like monster. I definitely remember from the Sentai, and the only reason why I remember that is because I've been going back and rewatching a bunch of the Sentai seasons in preparation for Zyuohger, which is going to be coming out tomorrow, the day after the third episode of Dino Supercharge. So I've been trying to go back and rewatch seasons, and I've gone from Gokaiger, and I've already watched it to Ninja, and now I'm going back from Goseiger and going in reverse. Anyway, let's just say, let's keep going here, and let's keep talking. So then what happens is that Heckle appears before Shelby with a package and says, there's a package, there's no return address, there's no nothing, but I have a package for you, apparently. Maybe, and he suggests maybe it's from her father. And so she's like, okay, I'll open it up and look. And there's a pillow inside. And, Heckle thinks that maybe her father's saying, this is something, maybe you should sleep a little bit. And so eventually she does end up, trying to fall asleep, and thinks nothing of it, just goes right to sleep. So when she falls asleep, at that point, she then has Nightmare come into her ear, and suddenly causes her to have nightmares as she's asleep. As the nightmare comes into effect, she begins to her body begins to work as though she's sleepwalking or something like that, and she ends up seeing her ranger friends, all the other rangers, as Vivix is. This for those that do not know, is very similar to the first 2 seasons, 2 episodes. I'm not sure if it was 2 episodes or just 1 episode. It's the episode Putty on the Brain. Really well-known episode. It's this episode where Billy and Billy and Zach end up seeing all the Rangers as putties. Now that was back during the first season, so obviously this is a good nod to that. I think there was another episode that this nods to. I feel like it was just the 2nd season. I don't remember. But I definitely remember that, and that's definitely a thing that's been done before, you know, having them see their comrades as villains, and then them having to figure out a way to stop that. So that's a thing, and eventually they realize that that she eventually, like, comes out of her nightmare and wakes up, and at that point Nightmare comes out of her ear, and at that point, they end up seeing the monster and he ends up talking or whatever. And eventually, it's just basically like they have to go back to the base and scan her. And they discover that nothing's wrong with her, but maybe at that point they have to scan the pillow that she got as a package. So she ends up looking at. What happens is the Rangers know that they can't fall asleep, because if they do, then maybe they might have the nightmare and might be affected in the way that Shelby was. So they have to be careful in this case. So because of that, the Rangers know that they have to stay awake. So during the night, they have to, you know, entertain themselves, you know, goof around, do whatever they can to just stay awake and try to, like, monitor each other just to make sure that no one falls asleep. In the meantime, Kendall, or Miss Morgan, ends up monitoring the pillow and tries to, you know, determine maybe if there's some connection to the pillow and why that whole entire scenario happened with Shelby. So they end up doing that, and they end up determining that there is some sort of sound wave that goes out, that when a person falls asleep on the pillow, it allows Nightmare to go into their brain and, you know, take over and cause them to have these sudden nightmares that are very dangerous. So that happens. So then following this, we see back in the monster base that Nightmare's talking to Heckle, and they're talking about, like, how the Rangers were really good today and they haven't been able to put a pillow down on them and make them fall asleep or whatever, so something must be done. And so then at that point, Heckle suggests, you know, Fury, maybe you want to summon some Vivixes. Maybe that will work. Now, you may think to yourself, why does that matter? But you'll find out very soon. So let's just say this. So then what happens is that they've discovered that and all that, and it's all good. And I'm just trying to remember now what's the next thing. Right. So then they go back to the cafe in the morning, because they have to open up the cafe because it's daytime. And Shelby's father sees Shelby studying dinosaurs, and, you know, he's snooping and all that. He's doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing, but she doesn't, you know, he doesn't really approve of her interest in dinosaurs. So it's clear that things are not necessarily the most positive in that regard. You know, they're not at the best. They don't have the strongest relationship when it comes to supporting those feelings. And she's not really interested in the business aspect of it, but she is interested in dinosaurs for sure, and we know this. This has been known for a while. So I mean, think about it. Like, there was 2 or 3 episodes in the last season that did that. So that all happens, and then he ends up explaining in his own way business and how it's so important, and how, you know, being entertaining and creative and being very smart and very business savvy and trying to create things that may be cheap but may have some flair to them. And he creates this special Bronto burger that, like, has like sparklers coming out of it and all that, and a nice plate of fries, and it looks really, really, like, you know, something that's very, you know, carnival-esque and very theatrical and cool, and it looks really awesome. Like, that would be amazing. Like, it's something that would be amazing to just, like, that's what you, like, to see that in a store and they actually, like, offer that. Like, it'd be cool. Yeah. So clearly, all the other Rangers are excited, but, like, she's just like, no, don't treat what he's showing as something that's big, because you know what, that's just how he is. And I mean, it is cool though. It's something along those lines. So that all happens. And then her father So then the Rangers then get a distress call. You know, obviously they have to go out and attack the Vivixes. So they go out and they end up fighting them. And when Tyler, for example, starts to try to fight them, you know, usually the Vivixes are pretty easy to deal with. There's no issue. And they think at first maybe it's because maybe they're all asleep or something. But the real issue is due to the fact that they're not asleep. It's just that they're really, really tired, which means that their abilities are really, really weak. Meaning that, you know, usually it would be pretty easy for them to take out Vivixes, but because they're very tired, their abilities are diminished, and they're not really capable of doing so. So, you know, it's a struggle for them, but they do manage to take out a good bunch of Vivixes for a while, and at that point, then some more are summoned, and eventually we end up seeing our Gold Ranger who appears. Unfortunately, like Shelby, he ended up falling asleep on a pillow. Don't ask how it happened, but he did. And, you know, he was aware of all this. So it wasn't like he was missing from the episode. He was aware. So he ended up attacking the Rangers because he was under the nightmare spell and all that. And so they had to at that point, go and bring him back to the base. When they go towards the base, they eventually go into, you know, Tyler's you know, Jeep or whatever, and they find a pillow, and Coda grabs it and rips it apart, and suddenly Ivan finally reawakens. At that point, Ivan's confused, and then they explain it to him. Pretty normal. So that's all happening. You know, there's that whole entire confusion aspect being a thing. I'm just trying to double check things here. So then Riley and Shelby have to go. You know, Riley has to go bring Shelby to her test. Now, when they end up studying, going over stuff, Shelby actually ends up bumping into her father. Now, as we know, her father's not necessarily supportive of her interests. But the thing is that, you know, she says, maybe I'm different than you. Maybe I'm not, like, interested in the business aspect of things. Maybe I'm not gonna go into business. And her father's, like, not necessarily, like, understanding her or treating her with that respect, and, you know, doesn't really comprehend that maybe she's not interested in business. Maybe she wants to do something else. Maybe she doesn't want to continue with that legacy. Maybe it isn't her dream. Maybe it's just his. So that's a thing. That's definitely a thing. So clearly she's doubting joining, and he's not certain. So at that point, they have to go off and bring Shelby to her test. In the meantime, her father ends up seeing this little girl and her father talking to each other, and they see the little girl talking about, like, how, oh, I want to go into dinosaurs and all that, and then her father is being all supportive. And it's obviously something that they do occasionally now, where they try to, you know, connect these ideas, like show an example of something like where one is not supportive, then they show like a younger version of that to kind of connect the two ideas. It's always kind of a sweet thing, and sure in some ways you can say it's forced, but it works. It's not too bad. I mean, obviously it's intentional, but, you know, it's not the worst thing. It does the job at getting across the point that, like, maybe at this point he should consider, like, maybe not, like, going so hard on her and all that. And, you know, it definitely makes him think. So clearly it does serve some point, I guess. So that's a thing. So that all happens, and I'm just trying to see here what was next. Riley ends up Riley ends up talking to Shelby about how, you know, he grew up on a farm, and, you know, farmer and all that, you know, you're talking about country and all that kind of stuff. And so the thing is that he grew up with a family where a lot of them were cowboys and cowgirls and all that stuff, and, you know, his family wanted him to be a cowboy, but he didn't want that. He didn't want to do all that. He wanted to be different. He wanted to be himself. And as we know, like, you know, his big thing was his sword, you know, practicing sword fighting and all that stuff. So clearly he had his own path of interest, and he stood out in that way with his, you know, practicing sword fighting and all that stuff. So very different from his family. So he could relate, and that's something that's very cool that this show does, is that they do bring up those connections to characters and how, you know, they have these parents that didn't support them at first or whatever. So at that point we then see Curio, who, after Riley, like, says goodbye to Shelby as Shelby goes into the test or whatever, Curio puts a pillow into Riley's bike helmet, which is the you know, obviously he brought her over on a bike. So the thing is that he puts on the helmet. Now the pillow's in the helmet, and because it's in the helmet, Riley does fall asleep. So he's passed out at this point, and that's definitely an issue. So then following that, we then see Heckle back in the dinosaur cafe, which we hadn't seen for a while now. And, you know, he decides to just go up to the Rangers and just put, like, pillows that, like, you know, have the effect on the Rangers' heads or whatever. So he goes up to Tyler, he goes up to Ivan, he goes up to Chase, he goes up to Kendall. I don't know why, but, like, maybe he did go up to Coda, but I don't think they really showed him going up to Coda ever, which is why I was kind of confused, because it's like, shouldn't Coda have seen this too? I mean, I'm guessing they're probably he probably did. It's just that they didn't want to show like every single one or something. Kind of weird because it's only like 5 people. But anyway, after that happens, like Kendall's the last one that gets the pillow put on her, and you know Shelby comes back in the middle of her test. Like she actually doesn't really finish it, and she comes back and she sees Heckle doing all this at one point. Not at the end. Well, she comes towards the end, like when Kendall's getting a pillow on her. And at that point, you know, Heckle ends up talking to her, and Shelby begins to like come to like a realization like maybe something's wrong here. Maybe Heckle isn't the guy that we thought was so nice and kind and all that. And so then at that point she realizes, no, you're working for Snide. And at that point, you know, the other Rangers wake up and all that, and they're fine. And the thing is that, you know, you're talking about these 4 other Rangers. You know, Riley's somewhere else. Riley's doing his own thing. But the 4 other Rangers that are there, or so, the 4 or 5 other Rangers that are there, wake up and they realize something's going on. And you know, Shelby mentions this idea, and then following this, you know, Heckle's tattoo ends up activating, and he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to respond to the Rangers. He's obviously being found out, and eventually the tattoo effect happens, and Heckle, when he says, "I'm not working for Snide," he eventually transforms and he says, "I am Snide." And at that point, we see that the Rangers now know that Heckle and Snide are one and the same, and that Heckle is not a good guy. Now, this obviously creates an issue, and Heckle is not working at the cafe anymore, at least right now. Maybe there's some way that they'll change that, but as of now, that's a thing. Now, before I say like he's done for this episode, there was one important thing, and I forgot to mention in the last episode towards the end, was the fact that, you know, they ended up having their memories wiped because of the last episodes, you know, the whole entire like poisonous acid thing from what was it, Stingrage, when they ended up drinking a toast because they thought that they were successful and all that, they ended up losing their memories, all of them. So the thing is that Heckle even and Snide lost their memories completely. So the thing is that Snide ends up saying, "When I find your base, you're going to be sorry," or whatever. And the thing is that the Rangers then say, "Wait, fine, shouldn't you know," or something like that. Like they don't say "shouldn't you know," but like they're thinking that. They say "fine" at least. And the thing is that, you know, last episode they brought him back to the base, so clearly they know that he knows their base. But the thing is, hearing that he doesn't know makes them think, wait, maybe something happened. Maybe they forgot somehow. And maybe they're able to conclude that. So clearly there is that aspect that definitely puts things into perspective and makes you think a lot more about like, maybe things are not the way that they seemed at first. One thing I forgot to mention is the fact that when he put the pillows on their heads, he also took their energems from them. But eventually Shelby gets them back and gives them to the Rangers. So clearly this is very important because, you know, it's already the 3rd episode only, and the Rangers now know that they're one and the same. So, you know, his whole entire hiding that he is Snide and at the same time he's evil is now a thing of the past. He's evil, we know it, the Rangers know it, there's no questions. It's pretty early, but it works. So that all happens, and so then what happens is that what was it again? When they see Riley later on, they have to go out and, you know, try to find Riley because maybe he's under effect, and he's under that spell or whatever. So the thing is that in this case he ends up giving he almost gives the energem to Fury. The thing is, the Rangers stop him and he wakes up and he gets out of it, and, you know, the pill gets destroyed and all that. So at that point, the Rangers end up fighting Nightmare finally, when, you know, Nightmare comes out of his ear. And they end up fighting Nightmare, and it's a really quick fight. You know, they just do like their final attacks really, really quickly, some big attacks here and there, and Nightmare gets big. At this point, we end up seeing them use the Plesio charged Megazord, the Terra charged Megazord, and the Stegoraptor formation Dino charged Megazord, all together. Not combined, but just, you know, separate mechs, and they use the Dino Drive, and the what do you call it? I'm just trying to make sure I get this right. What was it again? They use the Dino Drive and the Dino Super Drive to power up. In this case, Tyler still uses his sword, but the thing is that we learned that each of the Rangers will most likely be able to use that sword. So it's not limited to just Tyler, even though he tends to be the one that showcases it. We end up seeing in this episode Shelby use the sword, but he still has a sword, but he's using it in the Plesio Megazord, and it's not like this, like the emphasis is on Shelby. Like, she gets the batteries put in, he doesn't. You don't see that ever. So clearly, we're gonna probably see each of the Rangers, like, they're gonna have episodes specific to them, and each Ranger will have their own episode, and they'll get to use the sword, which makes complete sense. And I expected this, because if we see this from Shelby, we're gonna see this from Chase, we're gonna see this from Ivan, we're gonna see this from Riley, we're gonna see this from Coda, we're gonna see this all around. No questions there. I'm sure we're gonna see it from every Ranger, so don't even think that it's not gonna happen, because it is gonna happen. Otherwise, they end up taking it out, and we eventually see that Shelby is now going to work as a tour guide at the museum, and she is done with the business stuff. Her father is in the crowd that sees her, you know, working as a tour guide at the museum, and they end up talking, and he ends up saying that he'll support her and he'll listen to her and agree to what she has to do, and, you know, be an advocate for her and treat her with the same respect, and say, like, you know, I had that ice cream vision in my mind, and I enjoyed all that. This is your thing. You do your own stuff. You get involved in your own interest. You know, go out there, do your dinosaur thing, and I will support you all the way. And both you and your mother will support you and all that. And, you know, it's a very sweet moment, and it's a nice one that ends pretty well. And the last thing that's done is that Shelby ends up asking her father one more thing, like, can you make us a dinosaur cake? And he makes this really nice cake, and the Rangers are down the base, and they end up are about to eat it, and Coda almost just eats it whole, but she's like, Coda, plates. And so he has to go run and go get plates so that they can then divide it up. And it's a nice, simple, but cute ending that ends pretty well and really shows a good side of the Rangers. Just in general, this was a very, very cool episode. A good episode that had a lot of details, and, you know, each of these episodes so far has had some connection to the story, and has brought out more and more information about Heckle and expanding his story, and also the Rangers. I believe it's either the next episode or the following episode. We should either be getting the you know, Tyler's super drive special super drive form, or whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about. You know, his special armored form. Or it might be, we might be finally getting the Aqua Ranger in the next episode or the following. I don't remember now. I feel like it's the armor and then it's the Aqua Ranger. Don't ask me. But something should be happening very soon. We should be getting something either next episode or the following episode for sure. I believe Aqua Ranger is the 5th episode. Don't hold me to that, but I believe that's right. So, until then, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time, and goodbye.